Hello, everybody, and it's time to review last night's fight card, the Grasso versus Araujo fight card. And before we get into this, quick one. I'm assuming that I'll probably not get an answer to this. I'll say that right now. But can anyone explain to me the appeal of Andrew Tate? This has been a big deal because Aljamain Sterling and Leon Edwards were pictured with Tate. Sterling had a pro Tate series of tweets that do not make him look particularly good, in my opinion. But at the same time, I've said this before: fighters' political opinions, social opinions, and so on probably should be expected to be fairly bad. I said this to somebody on Twitter who was like, I had made it clear that I thought that defending Tate for Aljo was a bad move. He's like, well, what about Habib? And what about Islam's thoughts on women? They're also terrible. The list of fighters that I have like a rosy opinion of their politics is incredibly short and almost entirely limited to people that I have had the pleasure, in this case, of having met and having gotten a feel of as a person. And since none of those are big stars in the MMA community, guess what? That means that if you've held a UFC belt, I am at best neutral on your politics because I don't know what they are. And at worst, pretty hostile to them. Because you made it clear that they're, in my opinion, from my point of view, stupid. But here's my thing with Tate. To a degree, I could ask the same question about the whole, I'm going to call it men's rights movement. They sometimes use that term: philosopher, life coach, self-help guru, sexual advisor, whatever you want to call it. I don't find the appeal personally to any of it, but I kind of understand the end goal for most of them. But with Andrew Tate, it's, hi guys, I'm Andrew Tate. Now, you will listen to me to learn how to pick up chicks, have degrading sex, probably, with them, and then have them accuse you of raping them. Why does that have appeal? It's really bugging me. It's really bugging me why that has appeal. And then the final step of that is, you will achieve notoriety and to the level that you leave to immigrate to Romania. And this is a direct quote from him. 40% because of their lax laws in regards to sexual assault. Like, I'll be honest here. I agree that Tate has not been proven to have done anything illegal. Like, that's on the table. But how many people do you know, including the various, we'll call them players that you've met in your life, that have that level of a toxic relationship with their former sexual partners, that they would make those accusations frequently enough that you would leave the country? Again, this is like giving him every benefit of a doubt that, like, he in fact has never broken the law, that he is an absolute angel, legally speaking. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Anyways, that is the hotbed of MMA Twitter for the day. Let's get into the fights here. Alexa Grasso versus Vivi Araujo. I scored the first 4 rounds for Grasso. I gave the 5th round to Araujo. Essentially, throughout the fight, Araujo was getting outlanded. I think only in the second round was there significant volume difference. I think something like 18 strikes. So that was the only round that I think you have to give to Grasso. But I do think that she was just a step ahead the whole time. Araujo's takedowns didn't really lead to anything. Like, they broke some. They did for Araujo what Corey Sandhagen's takedowns against Yadong Song did. In the sense that you use them to break the flow and maybe open up some ability to land some shots in the clinch, land some shots on the separation, maybe get some things going. But like the thing is that, okay, that's in your volume and you're being out volumed. Like she probably landed the absolute best shots of the fight, but nothing like super great. She didn't drop Grasso. She didn't particularly stun her. She didn't particularly stagger her. She didn't particularly hurt her. So as a result, it's not really much of an argument for her. I didn't have any like really good picks for them, like where to go from this. Grasso against Lauren Murphy is like the only unbooked fighter above her. And I don't think this performance warrants a title shot against Valentina. Like I know Grasso's got a good winning streak going here, like a really good one. Like one, I think they put it up there. She's got like the second longest winning streak in the women's weight classes in the UFC, which is very impressive. And it's been against this one was against the number 6 ranked girl in the division. But I don't think anyone's clamoring to see that shot. Now, if Manon Fiorot has like a super dull fight coming up, maybe that opens the door. But I don't know. I think probably Grasso Murphy is, a fairly good fight. Murphy is also predominantly a boxer. And it will continue to give Grasso winning fights that have a high enough profile to put her high on cards. Because the promotion leading into this card was very, very much skewed to Grasso. Like, there was very little promotion of Vivi Araujo in the lead up to this fight. And to me, that's just a mistake. It was a mistake when they did it with Mackenzie Dern and John Yan as well, where like everything, it's like Dern. You will learn who Mackenzie Dern is. But if she loses, you haven't built the other girl in any real substantial way, particularly if it's like a decision or something. So I thought that was a mistake. I think that in general, the UFC should be on these fight cards giving more or less 50-50 promotion. I'm not gonna say like every fighter is equally promotable. I think Grasso is tremendously promotable. I think she strikes a chord with the Mexican audience that they have for a long time been trying to make into a bigger thing for them. She's an attractive lady. She's reasonably exciting. I think the only thing missing is the fact that she doesn't really finish people. So I think it's obvious that like Grasso is the bigger potential star, but like cover your ass if she loses so that you've built the stock of the other girl. They didn't really learn that from the Dern Yan fight, I guess. For Araujo, I've got the loser of Molly Meatball versus Erin Blanchfield is a fairly solid fight. Spoiler, I think that'll probably be Molly Meatball. I don't know. Blanchfield, I guess, is a little bit weird because Blanchfield's last fight did kind of make me simmer down my expectations of her a little bit. But I still think, without getting too deep into that fight, that she will probably win it. Co-main event, Jonathan Martinez versus Cub Swanson. First round was pretty 50-50. Pretty 50-50 until Martinez knocked him down. And Cub was absolutely saved by the bell. There are a couple more seconds on the clock, and we're not talking about the leg injury that comes later. We're not talking about the leg kick stoppage. We're just talking about him getting finished in the first round. Round 2, though, was very much more Martinez's gig. He had the confidence to just step into the pocket and to utilize the clinch. Because a thing that Cub was doing in round 1 was clinching a lot to rob Martinez of free space. Because Martinez does his best work on the outside, but isn't necessarily great at retaining it because he retreats on a straight line. Like, it's pretty easy to follow him. You don't need super elaborate footwork to kind of corner Jonathan Martinez and make it into a clinch, into a closer range fight. And he was more controlling the clinch in the second round, really punishing Cub every time he did it. Like every time they split up, Martinez would punish Cub, and eventually Cub just kind of got stuck exchanging with him at range, eating the leg kicks. Eventually, that compromised the leg. We had the oddity, of course. Cub Swanson has a great poker face when it comes to hiding that he's injured, but there was a one point where he did like two of those oppas, where he like squatted down after the kicks were starting to really chop that leg down, and there's just no way to avoid that the leg was mentally compromised, and eventually got finished with the low kicks. Fantastic performance by Jonathan Martinez. Called out Dominic Cruz afterwards. That is not happening. I will make that quite clear. That is not happening. I still don't feel good about Cub going down to 135. I think the weight cut is not a good idea. Also, there's always been kind of like this weird troughs and peaks of athleticism in MMA. Obviously, like heavyweight, not very athletic. 205, quite athletic. Middleweight, not so athletic. Welterweight kind of gets athletic. Then it keeps going up to lightweight. And then featherweight's kind of a drop off again, with bantamweight being the upward swing again. So I think, to be honest, particularly if you're Cub Swanson and one of your assets is speed, pursuit, footwork to a large degree, I don't think bantamweight is a good idea. And then like just in general, cutting more weight in your late 30s than you've been cutting up until this point, I think is a bad idea. I think almost everyone is fighting a weight class below where they probably should be, with the exception of some of the women's strawweights because of the lack of an atomweight division and heavyweight, obviously. Anyways, all that's to say is, like I said, Martinez not getting Dominic Cruz. I would love to see him fight Hani Barcelos. Like, I think Barcelos is coming off a super dominant performance, but over a super lacking fighter in Trevin Jones. And like Jonathan Martinez kind of is like a similar test to what Victor Henry did to Barcelos with more athleticism. So has Martinez learned a little bit? Or not Martinez, has Barcelos learned a little bit? And how, Martinez is on a good roll here, but it's kind of a rather untested one. Like Barcelos would give that physical and technical challenge. And obviously I have no idea what's up next for Cub. Depends what he's talking about in terms of rehabbing the leg. Depends how bad that rib injury is that he appeared to sustain. Depends what weight class he's going to. Depends, honestly, if he's going to retire. And all of those things really make it virtually impossible to say who Cub's going to fight. Dushko, Todorovic, and Jordan Wright was really bad for the first round because I don't want to see these two grapple. Dushko tried to get the takedown. Jordan Wright ended up top. Dushko went for the leg. Went for a leg lock for a while, but couldn't really get it. Was that never at any point close to getting that. And Jordan Wright was able to pull him back down, go for an arm triangle, go for the mount. There was a random guillotine jump with like 20 seconds to go for Todorovic, which is also dumb. Like, it was just kind of like, it was two guys grappling that like aren't good at grappling. And as a result, it wasn't super awesome. If you're Todorovic, you are trying to wrestle a guy whose grappling or whose wrestling coach is Vladimir Matyushenko. It's not going to be that easy. Like, it's not like Jordan Wright's weakness has been like his wrestling is Swiss cheese or anything. It's his ability to withstand striking pressure is terrible. And in round 2, Todorovic came out and was throwing. And he forced Wright to panic. Wright was really, really tired. And after having a first round where I think it went like 59-4 in strikes to Jordan Wright, there was a graphic that popped up like midway through the second round of 51-6 for Dushko. So like it completely reversed. And Dushko had a guillotine kind of position, headlock sort of thing. Gets down, gets them out, pounds them out. There you go. I still don't really have any faith in Todorovic. He still kind of is the guy who was fairly well-rounded and athletic in a scene that wasn't particularly developed. The Balkan MMA scene is not a super reliable training ground for fighters, which is why you have, Todorovic to a certain degree, but like also Uros Medic and a couple others who have like been signed by the UFC in recent years. And they've kind of had these flat performances where it's like, oh, this is what high level fighting is like. I wasn't really prepared for this. And that's Todorovic's entire career. And this win doesn't do anything to really change my mind about that. I haven't matched up against Roman Kopylov because I just think it would be a fun fight. I think Kopylov has like a little bit of the same problem. Not to the same degree, but a little bit of the same problem. And then for Jordan Wright, I'm advocating he get cut. He hasn't gotten any better by my estimation during his UFC run. He's cardio compromised. He has a really limited skill set. What he's good at isn't necessarily even complete because he has a lot of defensive problems and a lot of problems with like how he deals with pressure. And as a result, I don't really have any desire to see him continue to fight. So there is that. He's also one of those guys that like doesn't seem to enjoy fighting. Like, and I'm never going to derive a tremendous amount of pleasure from watching someone who looks that uncomfortable with such a large spectrum of the fight. It's the Jamie Pickett, it's the Uriah Hall, it's the Rampage Jackson to a certain degree would be like the most famous version of this, where like I don't think you enjoy fighting. Like at no point do I get the feeling that you enjoy fighting. So why are you here? Like the pay isn't good enough to put yourself through that psychological confrontation therapy, I guess. Have I Assuncao versus Victor Henry? This fight I had very wrong. I thought that Henry couldn't really be neutralized the way that Assuncao usually does. I thought that he had the creativity, the fight IQ, the adaptation to just kind of out-volume Assuncao. Just kind of go out there and not necessarily hurt him particularly badly or anything like that, because Assuncao still seems somewhat durable, because I think Ricky Simone and Cody Garbrandt are big hitters, but that he would be able to go out there and do his thing, and he couldn't. He couldn't. Assuncao made him look like everyone else he fought during the highlight of his time. Anyone who is really just kind of a volume striker, Assuncao really just seems to have that ability to slowly take your weapons away. He's going to catch your kicks. He's going to hit you with counters. He's going to make you hesitate, second guess about every strike. And that's what he did to Victor Henry. And I don't know if that's just like Victor Henry's hard ceiling, because we know Victor Henry's not a super gifted athlete or anything like that. There's nothing amazing about his power or his speed or his explosiveness. So is this just that, like, if you put somebody who just fundamentally can't hurt Assuncao in front of him, he still has it? Or is this like a real statement that Victor Henry's just, that win over Ronnie Barcelos is a little bit of a false dawn for Victor Henry? I don't know. Next opponents, Assuncao called out Dom Cruz. Or no, he didn't. Did he? Did he not? I can't remember if he did. But I do want that fight. I've wanted that fight for like ages. And they're both pretty much at the end of their career. And they both function very much outside of the ranking structure. Why not do it? You've got Cruz coming off a loss to Chito Vera, so I don't think anyone really wants to see him in a quote-unquote high-level fight against a prime fighter. Why not do this? Also, it would be just interesting that, like, Dominic Cruz, one of the most tactically variable tactically wide fighters on the planet as a striker, how would he do? How would he attack Assuncao? How would he figure it out? And for Victor Henry, we're talking about like how good is this kid in terms of like being a relatively limited athlete? How good is he? How much can that intelligence, that creativity, and that technique take him? Why not put him in there with Daniel Santos, Willie Cat? Because Santos is a defensive mess. So he is a canvas that Henry can paint on. But at the same time, he is also supremely athletic and dangerous. And it answers a lot of questions about both guys. I really like that fight. I know I had something else for Santos when he fought last, when he beat John Castaneda. I don't even remember who it was. And that's a sign that this is probably a better idea. Misha Serkinov, Alonzo Menefield. I was wrong. I kind of knew I was wrong when I made the pick of Serkinov. This was a loyalty pick. This was a guy that I've met and who made a positive impact on me. And I find it hard to pick against him. It's not that I can't, because I picked against Serkinov before. But it takes someone who just really, really, really is going to beat his ass. And I just didn't think Menefield was that guy. He was. He went out there and he bombed on Serkinov. Serkinov does not have a good chin. Does not respond to trouble very well. And Menefield got the job done. And I don't like the idea of him like having Pat Barry as his coach. Just because, all right. Someone suggested that maybe like you just need hype. And like Pat Barry is hype. Pat Barry is like, just go out there, simple instructions, hit him really hard, use your power, be the bull in the china shop. And maybe that'll work for Menefield. But I think there are still better coaches to implement that game plan. Like, is the General Saif Saud over at Fortis not kind of that guy? Really? I don't know. I think that this win really just has to do with Serkinov's flaws as a fighter and the fact that he's probably a guy who should be cut more so than anything about like Pat Barry being a magical elixir for Menefield's career. That's just me. Next opponents, I've got Menefield versus Azamat Mirzakhanov. I just think that's a fun fight. Like they're two dudes who are like short guys who battle with taller, who are going to have to battle with taller guys. Fight at reach disadvantages all the time. Why not let them kind of fight each other? Two little power kegs, go in there. Probably someone gets knocked out. So, that was my thoughts. Serkinov, like I said, probably gets cut. He has had a rough run after a false dawn. Mana Martinez versus Brendan Davis. This was a good fight. This was a perfectly fine fight, although I didn't like James Krause's coaching. Here's the thing about James Krause, the coach. Every time he gets super upset with the fighter, I just wonder if he has money riding on the fight, because he does the whole take over people's betting accounts and bet for them, and he bets himself. It's very weird. Very, very weird. Like, I'm not a big Pete Rose hater, being banned from the Hall of Fame for betting on the sport or whatever. But this does feel like a serious problem. We got ball shots. We got eye pokes in the first round. I scored the first round for Davis, but I seem to have been very, very much alone. The stats they showed later in the fight had Martinez landing a lot more. I just thought Martinez was hitting a lot of air, honestly. I'm maybe I should go back and watch that round and sort of either confirm my thoughts or move into the direction that like Twitter and I believe the judges moved in, that this was a Martinez round. But I thought it was for Davis. Second round, however, was definitely for Martinez. Like the knockdown with the spinning back fist, Davis getting saved by the bell. In what was otherwise a fairly 50-50 round. Martinez definitely won that one, and then I had Davis winning the third round. So I had Davis winning the fight. but that was with giving him the first round, a round that I seem to be on an iceberg on. That seems to be my Cecil Peoples, Sal D'Amato, bad judge moment. Was that first round? Um, I still have significant concerns about Mana Martinez. I think he's trying to learn. Like, he's gone to a new gym and everything. He's at James Krause. Hopefully that'll add new wrinkles to his game. But, like, there was a lot of talking to Davis in this fight that I'm not really ever a fan of. Unless you're doing something, I don't know. Unless you're doing something like nostalgia. Like, Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler could have gotten away with, like, doing a lot of talking in their fight. And I wouldn't have had a problem with it. But in this one, I don't know. It just looked like you were kind of having a sparring match a little bit more. Like, there was enough violence there that, like, at no point was I bored with the fight. But it's a bit weird. I still think Martinez's insistence is a problem. And Brandon Davis, I just don't think is ever going to be really all that good. I think that he's going through a weird patch. Like, when he came to the UFC the first time, he was this super high volume action guy. And then he went through a period of, like, trying to be a little bit more of a wrestler, a little bit more of an outfighter, but without ever developing the skills. And, like, he's talked about having knee problems, so, like, physically he's not at his best. I just don't think he's ever going to put it together. I think we've seen the best of Brandon Davis. And I think he might get cut. But I have penciled in here that, like, he could fight Chad and Helliger. Another guy that I think probably just doesn't really have the physicality to be in the UFC. And that I think would be a fun fight. Like, this is bantamweight. This is a place that is not forgiving to people who don't have a high level of athleticism. And for Mana Martinez, I think a fight between him and Christian Quinones would be fun. I do think that would really be fun. And they're two fighters that I think have the appropriate building blocks, but haven't really put it together. And one of them probably will have to win that fight and look good. So there you go. Nick Maximov versus Jacob Malkoun. I was wrong on this fight. I thought that Maximov would be able to control the positions. But here's the thing is, like, before he hurt his leg, he was probably winning the fight. Like, he dropped Malkoun, and I thought was landing that left hook at an alarmingly high percentage, I should say, and very, very clean. And it was the leg injury that kind of allowed Malkoun to control the grappling aspects of the fight and win all 3 rounds, in my opinion. It was disappointing to see him not get a finish. He talked about afterwards not actually knowing how to kick, which is a bit weird because, like, he's Robert Whittaker's teammate. Like, that was why he got signed at 4-0 to the UFC with wins over essentially nobodies. And he doesn't have a kicking game. He doesn't have a diverse striking game. It's a bit weird. I want to like Jacob Malkoun. Like, I really, really do. He's a dude who is totally making his way in this world with hustle and maximum effort, and for the UFC, pretty limited levels of athletic talent. But at the same time, I just don't think he was really ready. And I'm never that excited after his fights. It's kind of weird. My note of the night, I suppose, was two things. One, the commentary was talking about how this was like a real learning experience for Nick Maximov. My question is how? Like, Maximov learned in this fight that he can't beat Jacob Malkoun on one leg. I may be underestimating Jacob or Maximov's ego, but I expect that he already knew that. And also, for Malkoun, new career high for takedowns for Malkoun, but then again, his opponent is Zach Gowen. And for non-pro wrestling fans, Zach Gowen was a pro wrestler who had one leg. It was literally his gimmick. Like, when he was a heel in ROH, Ring of Honor, his whole thing would be like, he would cheat, and then when the ref caught him, he would go, "I got one leg," and get, like, you know, all the sympathy, the sympathy yet heat. in the world. For Malkoon, the next opponent I pencil in Puna Soriano. I think that him and Puna Soriano would have a really, really fun fight. And I have no idea for Maximov because he's probably going to be on the shelf for a little bit. And the middleweight division might look completely different. We do have Bo Nickel coming in. So I think the bottom and mid of the middleweight division probably is in for a considerable shakeup in the next couple of months. Joe Anderson Brito versus Lucas Alexander. Ooh, this fight was interesting. We saw a rock bottom hit in a UFC fight. Essentially, this kind of kicked off when Alexander threw a spinning kick, and Brito ducked under it, and then just did the what we call the Scott Hall special slam. So we had a Scott Hall and a rock takedown from Brito on this night. Get slammed. Again, this was the rock bottom. I thought, okay, Brito might just like gas out right here, but then he didn't. He did not. He proved to be way too much for Alexander. First round stoppage. Called out Dan Ige after the fact. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the Dan Ige fight. Like that is a perfectly solid call out. It's rank appropriate. I think it's a good come down fight for Ige, who's been fighting at the very, very top of the division. I think it's an interesting, exciting fight. It's two dudes who go out there and they hit hard and they fight at a very high pace. So like I am very, 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 very down for that fight. And for Alexander, I think he should be cut. Stay with me for a moment here. I don't think Lucas Alexander should be done with the UFC. I think Lucas Alexander needs to go back to the regional scene for development purposes. I don't think in this weight class, he is going to get the matches that will allow him to work on what I see as a fundamental lack of decision in the fight on Alexander's behalf. What I mean by this is that Alexander has no tools, it seems, to define the range of the fight or what type of fight he has. He can defend takedowns. He can move backwards, but he does not have any insistence to do so. His way is like, all right, you want to come into the pocket, establish the pocket, or crash the clinch? I'm going to hit you. And it's great at a low-level scene when you have an athletic ability over someone where you just have the ability to just maul them, for lack of a better term. But in the UFC, that's just going to allow the other guy to pick what type of fight you're having. And it's a type of fight that he probably is going to win. So for Alexander's long-term benefit, I think he needs to go back to the regional scene, fight some people, and kind of learn, kind of have that come to MMA Messiah, MMA Jesus moment where you become aware of what you need to change. And I think in the UFC, he's just going to get crushed repetitively. And I don't want to see that because I think that there is a really, really exciting high-level fighter in Lucas Alexander. There is nothing that he can't fix with time and development. So let him go get that development. Pierre Rodriguez versus Sam Hughes. A lot of people were pretty happy with this fight. I was not, just because I was riding Pierre Rodriguez hype train, I guess, a little bit too hard because I thought she would really do really well in this fight. I scored the second and the third round for her. I gave the first round to Hughes. I thought Rodriguez was landing cleaner throughout, but I thought Hughes landed a little bit more volume in the first round, particularly, and it seemed to hurt Rodriguez kind of with nothing. I think it's just Rodriguez has kind of like a bad reaction to certain things. Maybe it just like hit her in the eye or something, but like she had that scrunch up of the face and the back off like really, really quickly. That never really looks good. It looks like you got hurt. She didn't fall down though. She didn't appear to lose her balance, so it couldn't have been that bad. But like that was the most that was the high point, I guess, of the first round and of the fight, really. Rodriguez's takedowns didn't really go anywhere. So like I really found the commentary talking about how the takedowns might play a role. to be kind of annoying. It was kind of like the main event with Araujo and Grasso, where it's like, okay, those takedowns are not meaningless. They disrupt the opponent. They take away their offense, but you're not landing any defense, and you're not even really scoring any kind of control to lead to offense with them. So that was a little bit disappointing. She did have some good clinch work with some good knees, though. It's just with the physical edges that Rodriguez has, like she is a beast. She is a beast. And it didn't come together. It did not come together. I see Rodriguez facing maybe the winner of Polyana Viana and Jinyu Fry. I'm a little surprised Jinyu Frey is still around, to be honest. And for Hughes, the loser of Vanessa Demopoulos versus Maria Oliveira, I think would be appropriate. I guess the other thing is, I guess that I'm just horribly underrating Sam Hughes. And I realize that I think I've picked against her in like every fight she's had. And maybe this is my come to MMA Jesus moment that like I need to reapprise what I think of Sam Hughes. CJ Vergara, Tetsuya Taira, not really much to say here. Taira was able to get takedowns really, really smoothly, get dominant positions, and went for a rear naked choke to an armbar submission. Super clean, super smooth. Doesn't really tell me much, though. My concerns, I went into this in the lead up with Taira, is that I have no doubt that this kid is tremendously technically talented and seems to have just a general smoothness to him, coolness under pressure, and really good speed. I don't think he's particularly strong, but he seems quite quick. But you see it in his ground game. Like there's not a lot of ground and pound. There's not a lot of insistency on the feet. And I'm also a little bit worried that almost all of his takedowns are coming off of the other guy's aggression. So I was saying with Lucas Alexander earlier that he lacks an ability to find a fight. I'm kind of fearful that Taira has the same problem. But it's less of a problem because at least he has like a counter-oriented game. If that makes any sense. I have him fighting Tyson Nam next because I think that's perfect. Nam is a fighter who makes a living off of being a career or a counter power puncher and striker. He's not going to give you the aggressions that Vergara does with aggression. He's reasonably athletic in his own right. And he has the ability to, it'll be that kind of thing like where like the question for Taira will be, I am not going to give you a wide open door to walk through and make this a grappling match. What are you going to do to make that door happen? And do you have the volume and the offensive style of game to make up for that? Because the Japanese scene is a generally slow-paced kind of fight scene. And I think almost every fighter that comes from there is going to have these exact same questions from me. And for CJ Vergara, I put in Bruno Silva, who has not fought in like some times. I don't know what's up with that. Mike Jackson got destroyed by Pete Rodriguez. I think this fight tells us absolutely nothing. Mike Jackson shouldn't be in the UFC. Shouldn't have been to begin with. Because if you recall, he was brought in to fight Mickey Gall for the right to fight CM Punk. And I don't know why they felt the need to do that. How I would have handled it, and I'll be honest here. If I was in charge of the UFC and CM Punk was like, "Hey, I want to have an MMA fight," I would give it to him. It's a freak show fight. And yes, I would probably hire someone to take him on. Why they felt the need to hire Mike Jackson to give Mickey Gall a tune-up fight or a introduction to the fans fight, I have no idea. I would have just gone to that fight, and then and especially I wouldn't have kept Mike Jackson around. I don't know. I don't know why he was booked to fight Dean Barry, because that was a fight that was going to tell you nothing about Dean Barry if he hadn't just fouled the crap out of him. And this fight also didn't do anything. Like I still, beyond the fact that he is not as good as Jack Della Maddalena, which most people are not. By the way, Jack Della Maddalena being on 10-10 off the Contender Series is a complete indictment of his management team. Mind you, this is the case for almost like everyone with any stock off the Contender Series. But anyways, and like I said, this fight doesn't tell you anything. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know who should be next. I still don't know if Pete Rodriguez is ready for the UFC. If he would be better suited taking regional bouts, sort of a similar case to Lucas Alexander. Like, I don't even want to say that like he has the upside of Alexander, because like while there is undoubtedly power to him, like you look at him, there's a powerful build there, there's an explosiveness, there are things you can tell about him, even in fights that the opponent doesn't ask any questions. Like that there is a certain level of physicality to him that is going to be interesting. But he's also a 5'9" welterweight. That begs a lot of questions. But I don't know. I don't know what to do with him. And with Mike Jackson, please let this be the end. He's had 4 UFC fights now. I'm not going to co-sign the people who are like the UFC is exploiting him or whatever. It's like, dude's living his dream. Like I don't view this as evil or anything like that. I just view it as pointless. Like that's all. Like I view all 4 of his fights in the UFC. Maybe not the CM Punk one, I guess, but I view them almost all as just pointless exercises that I didn't need to see. There you go. It's not a full-time fighter, shouldn't really be in the UFC. So that is the fight card. I don't really have much else to add. Like I said, MMA Twitter is like really obsessed with the Andrew Tate stuff, which I kind of get, but I also don't get. I get why people are upset about it, because I've said this before. I may have actually even said it in the intro. I really don't know why we put any stock in the political value of like athletes in general. Like I've said this, like Novak Djokovic, for example, has like terrible views, in my opinion, on the vaccine. But if he had really positive views on the vaccine, would they change my views on the vaccine? Would they change my view on him in general? Not really. I don't know the man. I know he's a fantastic tennis player. If I want tennis lessons, his opinion really matters on like tennis stuff, but it doesn't really matter on anything else. As the same with like even someone that I like really like. Like for example, I was a massive fan of Wendell Clark back in the 90s, the Toronto Maple Leaf, Quebec Nordiques. I think he was a Jet at one point. Might be wrong on that. But Wendell Clark, mostly known as a Toronto Maple Leaf. Big fan of his. Like, sort of my icon as a hockey player growing up. Because I knew, like, being like Matt Sundin as my icon never really would have worked. Because I'm nowhere near the natural talent. I needed someone blue collar. For all of my fandoms. Because I'm not athletic. But, like, his opinion on anything wouldn't have affected my opinion on anything. Is what I'm getting at. Like, you're paid to play hockey. I care about your opinion on hockey. I don't really care about the opinion on anything else. But there is an audience for athletes to expose. It's kind of like anytime someone gets super pissed off, like, you know, the LeBron James go back to dribbling a basketball, or the Ted Nugent's opinion shouldn't matter. It's like, yeah, but like both sides of the political aisle like covet celebrity endorsement, and it shouldn't matter. Like, these are people that don't have much in common with your life. They make way more money than you. Not so much MMA fighters in that regard, but MMA fighters also have the fact that you getting punched in the head for a living. Like, how deep do you think the cosmic thinking of the MMA think tank goes? We'll leave it on that note. As per usual, the link tree will be, the links in general will be in the right or the left or the below or up, wherever the description of the video is. This podcast is on Spotify, Acast, Anchor, and YouTube. There's also a link to my Discord where we do simulated mixed martial arts fights, as well as simulated pro wrestling and slam ball, which is essentially basketball with elements of football, hockey, and trampolines thrown in. It was great. It was a great time back when I was in high school, and we're keeping that alive. And yeah, there's a fantasy thing for like the MTV Challenge stuff going on there, and you can talk about whatever. It's a cool group. If you want to join, the link is down below. So is my Twitter. So is the Facebook group page. Although, I'll be honest, the Facebook group page really is just kind of like a place to find the postings that the podcast is on. The Discord is where any like really interesting stuff happens. So there you go. I will talk to you guys, I think on Tuesday or on Thursday. I think there's a fight card coming up this week. And we're going to break it down. Might also talk about like some of the other stuff that's happening. We'll see. There appears to be like some stuff coming up in other promotions that I would like to talk about. So that might be included.